Hi, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today we are digging into a few things exponential related. So the state of the exponential pool. So since it has recently hit over 250,000 candidates, and I'm trying to remember when the last time that happened. If you remember ever seeing more than 250,000 candidates in the pool at any one time, just drop a note in the comments because I'd love to refresh my memory on that. So we're going to kind of just dig into everything exponential related when it comes to the composition of the pool. And we're also going to kind of work out some of the rumors that we're hearing around the Canadian experience class and what's going on with the lack of draws and all those kinds of things. So before we get started, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Rebecca. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I'm also the operations manager here at Moving to Canada, and I'm joined by my colleague, Stephanie. Steph, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, I'm Steph. If you read the Express Entry articles that we write regularly or the composition of the pool page that we update once a month, you've likely seen my face there. So I'm one of the staff writers. I've been with Moving to Canada for 1.5 years now. And yeah, I'm happy to be here to chat some of the data that I spend my day digging through quite regularly.
No, Steph's in her prime right now. Okay, let's get going. So let's take a look at the pool. So Steph, what are your insights?
All right. So the last state of the pool update that I did, I saw that the pool had hit 250,000 candidates sitting in there for waiting for an express entry invitation. Obviously, that's huge. And the pool is growing fairly quickly at the moment, in large part due to a relatively small number of large draws. The 501 to 600 category range, so 501 points to 600 points is where we're seeing a lot of the action at the moment. We had earlier in the year, that part of the pool did decrease in size because there was the points for valid job offer that were removed in late March. If you didn't see that, previously express entry candidates could get either a 50 or a 200 point boost for having a valid job offer. But unfortunately, due to pretty rampant fraud, RCIC has removed those points. So we saw a pretty big dip in the number of candidates in the pool at that range. In late March, early April was when the pool showed what was happening there. Around that time, I was looking at what we saw, and I did think that there was a world we would see draws where there would be fewer than 500 points, CRS points in 2025. At that point, I thought that we would be still seeing pretty regular Canadian experience class draws, and that we might get through the candidates that were in the pool at that point. I no longer think that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
The replacement rate for the 501 plus is staggering.
It's kind of crazy. Hey, I was so surprised. And I think so many people are going to be really disappointed. We're all expecting this massive shift in people with lower scores having a chance. When I say lower score, I mean around the 500 mark. So, and I'm just wondering whether that was intended. I wonder if it was intended. ISCC knew that this was going to happen. Who knows? It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think that might have taken a lot of people who were looking at the stats by surprise. We all knew that there were a high number of people, I would guess, getting LMIAs and getting those points. But the number of people jumping up above 501 is really high. We got a glimpse into the pool we had the PMP draw on March 12 and then the small CEC on March 13. Across those two dates, we got 2 glimpses into what the pool looked like, and there were over 100 candidates that entered the pool at the 501 range during that time. So it's happening quickly. And as a result, I can't predict the future, but just looking at how many people are entering the pool at the 501 range, I would now be quite surprised to see any draws where we're below 501.
And that's
25.
Going to be really disappointing for a lot of people, but I think there's a few things at play here. So let's just take an opportunity to kind of go into that. So the replacement rate. So what we mean by the replacement rate is when the points for the job offer were removed, we saw a massive decrease in the number of candidates that scored over 500. Within 2 months of that happening, all those we got the same number of people scoring over 500. And so I think there's a few things that have happened here. One of them being there is just kind of a crazy high number of temporary residents in Canada right now. And what we're seeing is we've seen a massive increase in the processing time to process in Canada applications for work permits. So what happens is if you apply for a work permit whilst your current permit is still valid, you can continue working until you receive like a positive or negative response on your application. So technically, someone that submits an application today and current processing is around 8 months may be able to work in Canada and maintain status for 8 months. They're almost acquiring another year of Canadian experience class. And you've got all these people that are doing this now. And so I really think that's what's really pushing the CRS score within the 500 mark up. There's also...
say, if people don't know how the CRS is calculated, you do get additional points if you get additional years of Canadian work experience. I guess, do you have the points handy?
Don't have them handy, but it will take me 2 seconds to... see, but that's true. So like if you have every year you acquire, you get additional points, and so that's what's really driving it up right now. So if we just have a quick look at Canadian experience class here, full breakdown. So from 1 point for 1 year you have, oh my gosh, it's so low down, 1 year you can get 35 to 40, depending if you've got a spouse accompanying you. And you can see here on the screen in a second, like how that increases. We just go up a bit, how that increases. So if you gain an extra year of experience, you're gaining an extra 13 CRS points, which might not seem that much. And if you go from 2 to 3 years, there's also the skills transferable section. So the more you acquire, the more work experience you acquire, you can actually get a boost under core factors and skill transferable. And so I think that's what's happening right now is that many people are like going from the 2 years to 3 year CC, and so getting that little bit of a boost. There's just lots of people that's happening.
I put you on the spot there with that one, so thanks for pulling that up so quickly.
That's okay. I live and breathe Canadian experience class CRS points. So that's one thing. And so it's a huge issue right now. And if we're just talking about volume of in Canada applicants applying for work permit, we can see an increase. And how we do that is because, say, a month ago, processing times for work permits in Canada were like half of what they are now. So we know that more and more people are applying because the processing times are extended. Obviously, there's other reasons that could mean that RCIC are slowing down processing, but it would make sense that more people are applying. So I think that's what's leading to more people acquiring CRS points. Add to that, we do have a lower than expected volume of CEC draws. So although we've seen the similar number of draws this year as opposed to last year, CEC activity, so applicants with Canadian experience class, they haven't been as prominently invited as opposed to last year. And so there's just this constant build-up of CEC candidates. And then add to that, it's just never ending, add to that the PNP. So your PNPs, if you're following immigration news like we all are, PNP targets were halved for 2025. And so in addition to CEC being less active, you've also got PNP. Less people are being selected from the pool via the PNP, the Provincial Nominee Programme. So all those people that would originally get a PNP nomination and then selection via a PNP draw are again sitting in the pool, and that's again going to keep the CRS score higher because all these people have got Canadian experience, they might have Canadian education. So I think there's a few things that are causing this massive or faster than expected replenishment of those scoring over 500 in the CRS pool, in the express entry pool.
Yeah. On that note, I would like to dig into one of the rumors that we're seeing going around about the quota being exhausted for the In Canada focus. You mentioned that as an RCIC, you had seen this sort of rumor circulate a couple of times before in the past.
Yeah, so it's funny. You always find quota arguments always come up towards like the end of the year because it is a thing. So applications that they process now will likely form PR numbers, statistics in like 7-8 months time. So there's always like a play on when invitations happen. So what's interesting here is that it's earlier than expected. So
yeah. I did my favorite thing and dug into the admission numbers versus versus the invitations that we've seen. So via the Open Canada website, I can only see the admissions through to the end of Q1 in 2025, but it's showing it's in the 36,000 range, I think 36,500 odd PR admissions through Express Entry from January to March of this year. One really interesting thing, I went and looked back at 2024 and it was around the same number. Both of them were in the 36,000 range. So yeah, that just stuck out to me given that in that time we had the target slashed, but it does kind of show that there's a lot of chat around permanent residence and immigration in Canadian politics. And it does sort of indicate that there is some politicking around what is going on in permanent residence.
We're not seeing that. Like, we're not seeing the change that the policies are suggesting. Is that what you kind of get?
More the headlines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are completely on track with like some of the immigration targets.
Yeah.
But if you looked at the headlines in the news, you would assume that PR admissions had been completely decimated and that nobody was getting permanent residence anymore. It's not the case. It is a lot of, I would say, fear-mongering. Those sorts of headlines are going to get clicks. But yeah, if we dig into like where we're looking in the target range, the target for in Canada would be, it's around 82,000 this year. The immigration levels has a huge range from like 39,000 to 89,000, I think. They do set really, really broad targets. So 82,000-ish was what they planned to hit this year. It was their like the numeric target that they set, but that's within the range. If we look at the number of invitations that have been sent since May of last year, we do get right around 82,000. But what we have to remember is that those invitations include PNP, they include the category-based. So in terms of the in Canada quota being full, I would say at this point that that is just a rumor.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. But the thing is, whenever things like this happen, you always try and find a reason, right?
Yeah.
Like, there has to be a reason why ISCC have like almost abandoned CEC draws.
Yeah.
You're always kind of looking for those answers of what, and it's helpful because I mean, if you can explore all the possible answers, then maybe you can kind of come up with solutions yourself. But no, that's really interesting insight. I just wanted to touch on something you said about the targets and like the headlines. I feel like it's not like the targets have for sure reduced, right? We know this, but what's going to happen is, especially if you're looking from outside of Canada, the PR targets aren't that much lower than before. It's just the composition of how those targets will be reached. And we're seeing just so much competition from within Canada, right? Because of all the reasons, because we've got a huge volume of temporary residents right now.
Yeah, in the PR admission data for Q1 does support that as well.
Yeah.
Almost, yeah, so much of it. I think only there was 7,000 odd through federal skilled worker, and all of those would have come through category-based draws.
Yeah. So I think that's what's happened. Like they've kind of made these massive headlines, which people have kind of jumped onto. but the reality is the numbers aren't too different. It's the composition that makes those numbers perhaps that's changing, and you've just got more competition for the numbers that perhaps in 2024 you wouldn't have had the same volume of competition. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and we did make a note here. We have submitted a request to the government to let us know about what is happening with CEC. This process takes months for them to get back to us. So yeah, the reality is we don't know what is happening with CEC at the moment. We will hopefully have some data directly from the government within the next couple of, it'll be maybe a month left on the request at this point.
Yeah. So it's like recap all the things that it could potentially be. So we've got the job offer points removal. Like when did the Canadian government first announce that they were going to change the job offer points? I think it was like December, January time.
Yeah, it was late last year. I think around November was the first mention.
So then there was like talk that they're not going to do many draws because of that. Then we had the actual points change end of March. And whenever there's a points change, whenever they try and change the infrastructure that makes up the express entry pool, it kind of goes wrong. And so you can expect a little bit of a delay there. But again, it's always trying to find these reasons. I'm just trying to work out what the reason is now for the lack of CEC activity, I guess.
So I guess given that we don't know, as far as we know, nobody outside of RCIC knows what is happening with CEC. I am also seeing a lot of people trying to work out workarounds. So with that in mind, like in your experience as an immigration consultant, what are the takeaways? What should people be taking away from this conversation about the competition?
Yeah, so I think it's very interesting. You've got to always remember that there's not many people that say, I'm going to immigrate to Canada and have a really easy way of it, and just everything falls into their lap and they just kind of go and it's nice and smoothly. I think we can all kind of share our experience of it. It's hard, and how hard it is obviously depends on the circumstances and how many resources you have available to improve your chances. But let's look at what if you're in Canada and you score if you've got under 500 CRS points, you're going to have to find a way to increase your CRS score, which I know is much easier said than done. But what's in your control is improved language testing results. So if you can grab a few points from English, a massive thing now is learning French, obviously. If you learn French, then you have the opportunity to be exposed to French category draws, which is hugely beneficial. The more work experience you acquire, obviously, the better it is for you. If you're outside Canada with no Canadian experience, really category-based draws are your best bet. There's not much you can do within your control here. Obviously, the categories change per year. So every year they will announce new categories. They recently announced the education one. So keeping an eye on the categories, but also taking the time to optimize where you can. So if you know that you can get more points from language, take the time to improve your language, because again, if general draws resume or they change the categories and you're now eligible, you want to make sure that you've really maximized your chances of being an ITA, of receiving an ITA when that happens. So yeah, I would be, just know about what you can do, what you can't do. Is the main thing, in taking that within your control. A lot of people try to take advantage of like loopholes with competition being so high. Just make sure everything's kind of like by the book. Be confident that the effort you're putting in is worth what you're going to get out of it. Things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Anything else? I've sort of exhausted what I came here to say. Is there anything else you'd like to throw in before we jump off?
Yeah, well, I guess in Canada, so if you're in Canada, you might be like, oh, I'm going to just apply for my work permit, even though I'm not eligible for it, just so I can get an extra 8 months of work experience. I would just be like very, very cautious if you do that. And if anyone advises you to do that, if you apply for a work permit and you are not eligible and you know you're not eligible, there could be serious like repercussions of that. Generally speaking, there are loopholes with IRCC, and what works for a friend and they may get away with it, you might not get away with it, and you'll have serious repercussions. So it's always a case of weighing up the pros and cons. And I know they can, like, desperate times call for desperate measures. Sometimes it's really just not worth the risk because there's bigger implications at play. But saying that, I mean, hopefully we will see a pickup. I know I keep on thinking this. I think I'm just a very optimistic person. We're hoping that, like, CEC draws, we're getting into the second half of the year now, a couple of months away. Any draws that happen now or in a month's time will go towards 2026 quotas. So, like, hopefully we'll see a bit of a pickup, I think, is all we can say. And we'll try and keep you updated with everything that happens.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions, let's drop them in the comments and we'll try our best to address them.
Yeah. And if you would like to subscribe to the newsletter, if you don't already, the newsletter we share every single time there's an express entry draw. Yep. We put it out. It always includes our analysis of what's going on. Mm-hmm. So yeah, jump onto the website and check that out. We'll probably share that on socials, just in the, somewhere in the social post when we share this too.
Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you, Steph, for joining me. And good luck, everyone who is waiting for an ITA. We've got our
good luck. Bye.
Bye.